Hans, I want to start by asking you about Joe Biden's decision to talk openly and now aggressively about Trump's conviction. We mentioned that there was this internal debate within his inner circle. Any idea why he decided to just go for it last night?
He probably thinks the politics are good, right? I mean, this was really his second opportunity to come to the cameras. The first time, when it was last Friday, and if you listen to what Biden said at the time, he was very careful to focus his criticism on Trump's response to the verdict. And that seemed like that was the lily pad that the White House was going to put the president on, which is to say they would leave it to outside surrogates to attack him for being a convicted felon. The campaign itself might use convicted felon in press releases, which they later did Friday evening. But then the first time the president really had a public opportunity to, which was Monday night, not only did he say it, but the White House or the campaign sent out a transcript ahead of time of what the president was going to say. So it was premeditated, it was calculated, and I suspect the answer is really obvious, and it's right in front of us, which is to say how I started this all off. They probably think the politics cuts in their favor.
No lily pad needed there. Susan, this is now Biden openly calling Trump a felon. Does that change the campaign in any way? Is it sort of a new phase for Biden in 2024?
Well, I mean, yes and no. The no being that, the sun is bright, right? I mean, Trump is a convicted felon now, and he would be whether Biden personally used the words or not. I do think it's an important reminder because Trump had more than a year to prepare for the moment when this might happen. You saw this very premeditated barrage of statements, not only in support of him from Republicans, but really ripping down the justice system, the effort to goose the fundraising, which has produced some results for Trump. Democrats didn't seem to have the same kind of prepared plan for what to do in the event of a conviction. At least that's what it looked like. And so I think it's interesting that we're still a number of days after the event, still trying to figure out what the Democrats' exact strategy is. I'm looking ahead to that debate that is scheduled between the two of them and wondering, what is the approach of the incumbent president of the United States to somebody who not only wants to take back the office, but, Biden said it very openly in the Time magazine interview you just gave that he doesn't believe Donald Trump is fit for the office, regardless of whether Biden was the candidate or not. And that's a really tough position to be in, then, to be on the same stage with that person who's a convicted felon.
We have never had a felon run for the White House. Donald Trump is set to be sentenced in New York 1 week before the Republican convention in Milwaukee. How does this work technically?
So what happens is he has to meet with the Department of Probation, and they're going to ask him questions about what happened in that conviction, and he has to be honest and he has to be truthful.
What if he's not?
Well, if he's not, the judge is going to take that into consideration at the time of sentencing. Your average bear, if you were convicted and you did not take responsibility and you continued to call the system corrupt and attack the judge and prosecutor,
which he's going to do,
and jurors, he'd find himself incarcerated upstate in prison. And this is not falsifying business records for stealing 50 grand or 100 grand or even more. If you believe the theory, and it's been now proven beyond a reasonable doubt, he did this to really impact the election. And if there's anyone more deserving under these set of facts, it's not anyone but him. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think that's going to be the big issue for Judge Merchan.
Hans, Republicans are trying to spin this conviction, but the group Republican Voters Against Trump has just launched a 6-figure billboard campaign in 4 different swing states with former Trump voters specifically who have said they will not vote for him because he was found guilty. Who's this campaign really aimed at?
Oh, good question. Drivers. People that drive and look at billboards. I don't know.
Thank you, Hans.
Right? I mean, this is campaigns broadcast on different frequencies, and sometimes they appear to be targeting one group, but they're trying to get another. So this may be an attempt to give permission to independent voters who haven't quite made up their mind on Donald Trump, right? It's always hard for those of us that follow politics this closely to think that people don't have opinions on Donald Trump, but apparently there are 6% of Americans out there in the 6 swing states that will decide this election. So I suspect there's going to be one of many campaigns focusing on it. I don't think there are going to be many Americans left at the end of this election cycle that don't know that Donald Trump was a convicted felon. The question is, and this gets to the earlier points, do they think it was fair? And that's really why you see the Trump campaign, the Trump allies and his congressional surrogates trying to muddy the waters, questioning the fairness of the system. And that's going to be part of the conversation going forward. And, I think we should just all be bracing for that.
Just when I think I have a clever question, Hans Nichols hits me right between the eyes. Drivers, Stephanie. Good on you for that, Hans. Susan, Merrick Garland, very rarely do we see this, but he seemed to reach a breaking point today when the Republicans were going after him and after him. What did you make of how he handled the House GOP?
Yeah, I mean, look, that is, sort of conflict theater that is arranged by the House Republicans, especially you have, Jim Jordan. He's sort of the master of this kind of pro-Trump theatrics, which is a lot of what the House of Representatives has become since Republicans won back control of the House in the midterm elections. And, it's very interesting because remember that the reason Republicans are going after Garland now is because of the collapse of their impeach Joe Biden strategy. And, Jordan, Congressman Comer, they were leaders in that effort. And basically, their key quote unquote witness, ended up being indicted by the Justice Department, turned out to be peddling a false story. And essentially their effort to go after Biden himself flopped. That's why you saw the impeachment of Mayorkas. It's why you're seeing them go after the attorney general right now. And, Garland has been criticized by Democrats for being too, slow to go after Trump, too observant of the old processes in a new political moment. And I just thought this was very 2024 if you finally gotten Merrick Garland to punch back at you.
All right, Susan, I apologize. I am sure our audience doesn't want to be subjected to more of this at this late hour, but I want to share for a reason even more of House Republicans from today going after Attorney General Merrick Garland because none of what they're saying is true. Watch this.
For the first time in American history, we do have a presidential administration that's working to put its opponent in jail. I mean, that's a fact.
You're intentionally allowing the department and the agents therein to engage in political prosecution of their opponents.
The lawfare we've seen against President Trump will do great damage well beyond our time in public service.
Does that sound like to you, Jeremy, that what they are saying is that Donald Trump and his allies are above the law because their statements bear no resemblance to facts?
There's zero foundation in facts, and there's zero foundation in law. And it's really interesting. This is the same people that went after Democrats for saying defund the police, but they want to tear down the Department of Justice, rip down the FBI, and then blame it all as a hoax to get former President Donald Trump. It's really disappointing. It's really upsetting because outside that courtroom, back to the Manhattan trial, innocent inside that courtroom until proven guilty. Every second almost of those speeches outside the courtroom, it was an attack on the justice system.
And outside the bubble or outside people with expertise of the justice system, people don't necessarily know better. Hans, publicly, Merrick Garland is as unpolitical as they come. But given what Republicans are doing, does that even matter? They're literally making things up to satisfy their base.
The main issue that you've kind of seen with Garland, I think, Susan flicked at this, is that there's been a little bit, I don't want to lean into this too much, but there's been a little bit of disappointment inside the White House that he has been more political, that he hasn't punched back harder. And I think today we saw that from, remember, he was going to be on the Supreme Court. They ran out the clocks. Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans did, and he wasn't actually there. He was Solicitor General, and then he was a judge. He's on the Circuit Court judge. Now he's back. Now he's Attorney General. So I think that's really the main sort of issue I saw there, is that Garlick is punching back. The other issue is that Republicans don't have the votes for contempt, right? It's pretty clear that they don't have a vote for contempt. If they did, that would change the conversation, but they don't appear to have the votes. Now, that can change, but right now it doesn't look like they have them.
But they don't need the votes. What they are just looking to do is muddy the waters and confuse the American people. Susan, I want to touch on the point Hans just made. Some in the White House have been frustrated that Merrick Garland has been unwilling to get more political and punch back harder. And now here he is getting painted as super political. He's getting all the downside of being political when he wasn't even doing so. Should he have been? Look where it's ended up for him.
Well, that's Washington for you on some level. But I do think that when you consider where he's going to go down in the record books as Attorney General, it's hard not to reflect on and to second guess without, full information, of course, but to wonder if things might have been differently this year. Now we're not going to have either one of the two federal cases against Donald Trump that were brought by the Justice Department Special Counsel Jack Smith. Neither one of them looks like they're going to go to trial this year. There are a lot of Democrats, as well as outside observers, who think that the reason for that is Merrick Garland, essentially, and his caution in embarking on investigations of Trump and those surrounding him in the immediate aftermath of January 6th. I mean, we're looking at 4 years after the dramatic events of 2020 and what followed the election, and yet we're still not going to have a resolution on those incredibly serious allegations against the former president before he may be reelected to the office. And that is going to go on the ledger positively or negatively for Attorney General Garland.